Okay, let's get right into it. Let's attack every defense in the game with spread 2x2 4 verticals. So like with all the past few Maddens that I've been playing, I get my first feel for attacking different defenses by running just a simple spread 2x2 4 verticals. It's, in my opinion, probably the simplest, the most fundamental play in the game because you just have your 5 receivers spread out and they're attacking each of the 5 main areas of the field. So you got the left sideline, the left seam, you got the middle of the field attacked by the running back, you have the right seam, and then you also have the right sideline. And you don't have any sort of complex routes, you don't have to wait for any crossing patterns or anything like that. It's just immediately going to your zone right now, and after the snap, pretty much immediately you'll know who you'll throw the ball to. So in the past few years, I've shown different setups with, curl routes in the seam or comeback routes on the outside or blocking a running back and things like that. But for this video, we'll keep it relatively straightforward. I might do a couple of hot routes here and there just for added little bonus. But for the most part, what I'm going to be showing here is just going through each of the different coverages and just showing how we can attack it by just running 4 vertical routes and then this little check down underneath with the running back. Okay, so number 1, we'll just go with probably the most popular coverage in the game, which is cover 3, and there's a number of different ways that we can attack it. Again, I just want to emphasize that what we're looking at here when we're running 2x2 4 verticals are these 5 main zones, right? The left sideline, the left seam, the middle of the field, the right seam, and the right sideline. So if they're running some sort of zone coverage, they can defend all 5 of those zones, but they can't have 2 defenders in each of those zones, right? You pretty much always you have 7 defenders in coverage and you have 5 zones. So 2 of those they can have 2 defenders in, but the other ones they'll likely be just 1 defender. And if they're something deep, like say a cover 3 corner, you can hit them underneath. Or if they're low, like a Tampa 2 middle hook, you can hit them deep, something like that, right? So almost always, like 99% of the time, you'll have somebody open. Okay, things get a little bit different with man coverage, and I know man coverage is super, super good in this game, in this year's game, but towards the end of the video, we'll also have some really nice answers for that. So this year in particular, the alignment of your receivers is actually kind of important here. So in previous years, really any sort of spread 2x2 is fine. But this year, and this is really important towards the later of the video when we get into man coverage, who's on the ball and off the ball actually matters for us. Okay, so right here, I'm actually in spread double flex. And what that means is that the slot will be on the ball and the outside receivers will be off the ball on both sides. Okay. And the other thing is, again, this is related to man coverage, it's good to have the back away from the nickel. Okay, so that's all I'll say for now, but then let's just get into cover 3. So cover 3, let's just run 4 verticals like this, no hot routes, and this is stock cover 3, so you will get a bump in the seam right here. Okay, so, they'll bump your seam receivers, which, throws off the timing a little bit. But if you can just stay in the pocket a little bit, let's go look at the right seam, you'll find this big open area for a quick and easy completion. And the reason why we can do that is because on the defense, on the second level, so the deeper level, you only have 3 zones, right? You have 2 outside defenders and 1 defender in the middle of the field, but nobody in the left and right seams. So we can have easy completion to the right seam, as you saw there, and even to the left one. So the left one is a little bit tricky because it goes a little bit in more towards the safety, but if you make use of the freeform passing a little bit, do a little outside pass lead, you can also get this guy open for, again, an easy big chunk of yards. Now, what if we come into a situation, and by the way, maybe there's construction in the background, so I hope this first video isn't too annoying, but just bear with me for this one. What if we get into a situation where your opponent is manning guys up, or they take a user and help out on those seams? Okay, so now they're taking a defender out of the middle underneath area. Okay, so we can't throw that seam, but we can throw this check down pretty easily, right? And take it from there. So right away, just against stock cover 3, which you'll see quite a bit of in every Madden. That's always kind of the most popular coverage that people run, especially at the mid to lower levels. So you have three nice options there, and I promised that I wouldn't really do too many hot routes, but one thing that you can do is a field comeback route right here. So the comeback route this year is not, I would say not as good as last year, because you have to kind of wait until your receiver actually makes the break. In the previous year and the last year, you could throw it actually well before the break, and you would get, a high percentage chance of making a completion. Plus, you're throwing that before any sort of pressure can come in. So you have to wait a little bit longer, unfortunately, and it's a little bit tight overthrow. But if you have somebody, I mean, this can work with any receiver really, but if you have somebody with good deep route running and or medium zone, what do you call it? The medium route running, whatever it is. So the deep route running is important for that break, and then the medium catching zone ability, whatever it's called, is important to make sure that if he gets his hands on the ball, he'll for sure come down with it. So in this case, we're at a stock cover 3 where you have a curl flat engaging with the seam receiver. You'll have lots of space on the outside to hit this throw back here and get a toe tap, and again, an easy completion. Now, once you start getting towards the mid to higher levels, you're going to see more customization with the cover 3 with zone drops and different types of shading and things like that. And when they do that, let's just, for visual demonstrations, put these guys in a cloud flat, but it could be any sort of hard flat or zone adjustments or anything like that. That flat defender will shoot out to the outside. So now you have 2 defenders on the outside zone, the sideline zone, and really absolutely nobody in the seam. So the seam was already easy for us to complete, but now it's even easier because there's nobody jamming our receiver. So they get here right away, little obstruction, and in a lot of cases we can actually split the corner in the safety and come in for a touchdown. Likewise, if they call the play cover 3 seam, by default it doesn't protect the seam. Okay, so this is, if you have a match adjustment on, it will actually match. But by default, if somebody just picks it, they're just going to shoot out to the sideline. And again, leave your seam receivers free, either to the right one or to the left one for another big gain. But if they do have the match adjustment on, then these seam defenders, or these apex defenders, slot defenders, whatever you want to call them, will carry those vertical routes. Okay, so nickel and the down safety will carry those vertical routes, and the linebacker will come down on the running back. Not to mention that, these vertical routes on the outside will go straight at the cornerback. So in theory, everything is covered. So that's not great, obviously. One thing is that cover 3 seam with the match adjustment will likely be very rarely called in this game. But if you do come across it, you can actually force the throw just with a strong inside pass lead with the freeform passing. So let's look at the right here. The player will play with, the seam defender will play with the outside shade or outside leverage, and you just throw an inside pass lead and you should be good to go. Now, obviously, if your user defender is right here, maybe you don't want to really play with that because he could undercut that while also being close to the running back. But of course, what's great about 2x2 is that you have 2 sides, right? So if the user's over there, you just go to the other side and get your completion over there. Now, if you don't want to play around with that, again, you do have, and I don't want to do too much of this again, you do have the option to run a comeback on the other side. There's not going to be an underneath zone defender, and you go ahead and just get your easy catch down the sideline. Okay, so next up we have Tampa 2. Now, Tampa 2 by default in Madden 23 is not Tampa 2. Okay, so what I would consider Tampa 2 is when you have the middle hook defender essentially playing like a deep middle third. So it's 3 deep, 4 underneath type of coverage. But in reality, by default, I'd consider more of a cover 2 deep, 5 underneath, because this middle read doesn't get enough depth. Okay, he goes to like 15 or 20 yards or so, and he doesn't really cover the post area. Okay, now if they turn the match adjustment on, or if they do this hot route themselves, then they can create that. But by default, likely he's just going to stop short. Okay, so let's consider that. So it's really 2 deep, 5 underneath. So you have a zone in each of the underneath areas. So you have underneath sideline, underneath seam, underneath middle, and then on the other side as well. and then you have two deep guys. And I would consider these guys in this play to be seam defenders, essentially, because they're not going to cover the middle of the field, and they're not going to be able to get out the sideline as well. Okay, so again, so no changes right here, just 4 verticals. We'll look towards the left sideline right here. Once we beat that cloud flats jam, after a little bit of time, we can throw a forward pass lead. And if I waited a little bit longer, maybe I could have scored a touchdown right there. Now, what's important to note right here is that if you start to try to get smart with different hot routes or different formations and things like that, and you only have one vertical on that side, the seam defender, the deep seam defender, this guy right here, will know he doesn't need to protect that area, so he's going to shoot out to the sideline. Okay, so I'll just show you right here how it goes. If I don't have 2 verticals right there, he's going to come out there, and he's going to make that throw much, much harder, and you're going to have to rely on an ag catch or something like that. So definitely keep that there. Believe it or not, you can also do it to the boundary right here. So it looks like we don't have much space, but we can also throw it to the boundary right here. Again, I was kind of jittery in the pocket, so I throw it a little bit early, but it's still no problem. Okay, so both of the sidelines are completely open. And by the way, if they do like a hard flat over here, or if they're doing zone adjustments, like even a 30-yard zone adjustment, you'll be able to throw that no problem as long as you have the 2 verticals. And it's actually even easier because you don't have to wait for the chuck animation. Okay, so even, I'm not going to do it here just because I'm lazy, but even if they do a 30-yard cloud over there, you should be able to wait and get this guy out here. Now the hard flat obviously is super easy, but just take my word for it for this one. Okay, so the 2 sidelines are open, which is nice, but you can also, again, because they say this is Tampa 2, but really it's not Tampa 2. So the middle of the field should also be open right here. So you have 2 seam receivers, but late in their routes, they break towards the middle of the field. Okay, so this one maybe a little bit more aggressively than the right seam. And so if you can buy a little bit of time in the pocket, and for some reason you don't want to go to the sideline, they kind of get in their way, each other's way right here. And maybe for demonstration right here, I'll just put the left seam just on a basic vertical route right here. And again, if you don't want to throw it to the sidelines for whatever reason, you can get this guy wide open in the middle right here as well. Now, if they do actually run Tampa 2, so if they manually move this guy, or if they use that guy deep, they have that middle zone, but they don't have the middle underneath zone. Okay, so then last resort, you have the running back down here, and you can get 5 to 10 or maybe even more yards pretty easily. Now, obviously, they can do something like this is kind of next level stuff, but if they're going there, maybe they have a spy underneath, that will make things difficult, but at that level, you can take it to the next level, and you can playmaker that running back left or right, or if you have a fast quarterback, you can add a number to the game, and because they only have a 3-man pass rush, you'll have more time in the pocket, more ability to escape and things like that. But yeah, you can play around with things at this level, but maybe we don't need to get that complex. Okay, moving on to cover 4 quarters. So by default, cover 4 quarters is not cover 4 quarters. It's just a spot drop, weird 4 deep, 3 underneath, where the quarter flats don't even chuck the seam receivers or anything like that. So this is quite an easy defense to attack. But for this offense, we're running 4 verticals. It's actually, not the best approach. So you probably won't see this a lot, but just in case you do, again, you have 4 verticals here running at 4 deep defenders. So that's not great, but we do have our left seam receiver on an option route, right? So late in his route, he attacks the middle of the field, which technically there isn't a defender to account for that. Okay, so we can actually look at him. He's going to get a free release right here, and we can throw it underneath that safety for a reception. Now, obviously, you need to be careful here because if the user is this guy, he might try to drift underneath that. So you might need to play a bit of a high-low game right there. So if you're not comfortable right there, you can run this check down right here. Now, if they do have the match adjustment on, cover 4 quarters will play like cover 4 quarters. So things actually get a little bit worse for us right here because the 3 rec will come down on the back. We can't really throw it to him unless we do some playmakering and things like that. This option route sometimes runs the post and sometimes doesn't. So against kind of zone coverages and straight up man, that decision is pretty simple for him. But for whatever reason, sometimes he runs the post and sometimes he runs the seam. When he runs the post, that's fine. He's going to torch the safety and you'll have a big play. But sometimes, I don't know if he'll do it here, he'll run straight. Yeah, he'll run straight right here, and there isn't too much you can do about it. Okay, so obviously you don't want to throw that. Luckily, cover 4/4 isn't the most popular thing to run. But if you do really want to run this, you always have that comeback option on the outside, whether it's to the boundary, to the field, and you should be able to win one-on-one pretty easily out there. Okay, lastly, this is probably the most interesting one to everybody, so thank you for sticking along or fast forwarding through all the other stuff. But attacking cover 0 is a little bit different. So this is where using this alignment really comes into play, where the seams are on the ball and the outside receiver's off the ball and the back is away from the nickel. Okay, so there's a number of things we can look at right here. So number one, obviously, this is usually pressed. So you have press over here and you have a number of options. The first option is the left seam. So for whatever reason, this option route, when he's on the ball, he tends to get a free release or kind of a super win on the nickel defender. Okay, so in this case, you got a free release, throw it above, and we get our one-play touchdown, which is obviously pretty nice. And I don't think, obviously, I've only been on the game for a day or so who knows if there's some ratings thing at hand or some abilities or anything like that. But I think for the most part, it's fine. Like even if they do if they're shading, you'll get some sort of either a free release or an easy win, and you'll just throw it above that nickel defender and get your reception. Now, obviously, if they are off man or they are shading over the top, so they avoid that hard jam, you won't win over the top. But this post, he will convert this post on the option route, and usually he wins big on that. So unless the user gets involved there, that's going to be a big play for you as well. So that's the left seam. You can also do some interesting stuff with the right seam right here. So unless they're running some sort of dime package or dollar or something like that, they won't get a press on the opposite guy, right? Because you only have one slot, cornerback per se, and the safeties, you can't press them unless you manually move them. Now here's where we can do some funny things with freeform passing. We can do some sort of kind of like a back shoulder type of throw. And just to show this, I'm just going to take this guy out of the play. You can leave him on his vertical, but let's just try to keep it a little bit clean right here. And what we'll do is after 10 yards or so, we'll do an outside freeform pass lead. So like this, and we'll just rack catch that to kind of warp to the ball, and we can get ourselves a nice score that way as well. So that's something you might need to practice getting the timing down a little bit, but just after 10 yards or so, outside pass lead, I'm using the near setting, and then just spam the rack button. He'll kind of warp to the ball and you'll be fine there. The other good thing about this alignment is because the outside receiver is off the ball. Because he's off the ball, this comeback route, if we want to hot route that in there, is unbumpable. Okay, so if he's on the ball, he'll get bumped and it just kind of screws everything up. It makes things not nice. But in this case, it's nice and clean. Okay, we wait in the pocket, throw it after the break, and we should get an easy completion there as well, which is nice. And the last thing we'll talk about right here is with the back. So if you're running against like cover 1 or 2-man under or something like that, this little option route is pretty good in most cases. He'll convert. He won't be like the check down. He'll convert to the left or to the right, and oftentimes he'll beat the underneath defender, which is nice. In this case, we don't really want to mess around with that because it's cover 0. And why we want the back away from the nickel is because now it kind of messes up the alignment of the defense. So who's going to be covering him is the opposite side safety, which is obviously not ideal for them unless they do some sort of manual movement or things like that. So what we'll do is we'll put them on a wheel route, which obviously, if they're running a blitz, isn't great for protection, but it's quick, right? We're going to get that ball out there before the blitz can ever get in there, just like this. And before the safety can get there, and again, we got a big, unexpected, and quick and easy gain of yards. Now, obviously, in this case, you want to watch out for the user helping out there, or sometimes blitzing linebackers can jump for picks and things like that. So you might need to be careful there. But that's 4 good options against man coverage right there, obviously with all the zone stuff too. And that's not to mention the different things we could do with curl routes in the middle, or a touchdown comebacks. But really beautiful play. I love this every single year, and I think it's even better somehow this year. So yeah, so that's it for the first video here. Hopefully we'll be doing more videos, hopefully with less construction noise in the background. I will be doing my Deuce Close Plus membership there in the meantime, where there's much more in-depth. I was hoping this video wouldn't be so in-depth, but it just always ends up that way. So yeah, feel free to check that out if you want. But otherwise, yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one.